Welcome to another session on this Sunday morning. The 2nd of March. I appreciate your presence and looking forward to the sharing of your energy today. And I'm making every effort since GC pointed something out about saying good morning that we're actually talking about we are mourning. And I made every effort to avoid doing that by virtue of welcoming people to a new day and expressing my desires for them during this day. And my desire for you today is that our eye continue to be open and our journey continue to be inspirational. And we, from the inspiration, gain the strength to do what is needed to be done for the benefit of humanity. So now at this moment, I ask you if there are any questions or comments that you would like to make about something that you have read, something you have been privy to in some other way, or are there any questions based upon what we discussed in our previous session?
Hey, before we get started, I just before you go any further, go into mourning again. Where the background of that and say what you said again, please, if you don't mind.
Okay. George from Philly, we were in a conversation, and he made a statement that his daughter-in-law, my niece, has said about mourning, um, because the word mourning come from the word morning, and I'll let him pick it up from there. If
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, family. How's everybody?
Hey, GC.
Yeah, and again, just the words that we speak, the words that we say, and we know that words have its definition or its purpose. And so my sister, my daughter-in-law, she was saying, well, she had typed Grand Rising, and so I'm like, okay, Grand Rising. And so that was just a way of her saying that when she think about mourning, we look at it in terms of sadness, or we look at it in terms of that mindset of it being thought of that way. And so she just basically says in the morning now, Grand Rising. It would be the same thing if we say Hotep, which means peace, greetings. So there's various terminology of how words are used. But in this case, I was sharing with Pastor that with our family or my grands, they when they see pop, hey, Grand Rising. And so that was just a figure of speech or figure of language that I was speaking with Pastor about in terms of how we look at words and etc. So those are my thoughts. If that resonates or makes sense, or if there's any questions, I'm done.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate you sharing. Hotep again. That one was what's the little background on Hotep?
Yeah, well, a hotep again is just a Kush Kemetic term, in terms of how we greet. And if you get a chance, it means peace. It means, again, being appreciative of us connecting, and so we say ashe, right? The
Yeah.
hotep is just another, African term that that is spoken in a way that it means the same thing as we, look at teachings that we come across, such as Kwanzaa, and so I don't want to go in detail, but that's what Hotep means, Ron, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And, people can look it up, but it's basically spelled Hotep. And it's an Egyptian word, that means to be at peace, to be satisfied.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm done.
Thank you. Any questions about that or comments about anything else?
The only other thing I have that's an observation is I've just noticed that seems like people are friendlier right now, perfect strangers, and people are talking about prayer more. People are talking about God more. People are talking about the scriptures, and it may just be my observation in the upstate, but just something I kind of picked up on that I thought was interesting.
Thank you. I believe that people are more friendly because when people go through communal stress or have communal issues, they seem to connect more. And that may very well be one of the main reasons that we are having these communal issues with the current officials who are leading the government. Um, and based on what you were saying, Ron, um, people are beginning to look beyond this construct of race. They're
Yeah.
beginning to look beyond that because they see themselves as being in the same boat, even though a lot of them still haven't admitted it. Like, for example, the Ukrainians, they got what they voted for.
Yeah.
Uh, they they voted for Trump overwhelmingly. So when we think about what happened in the White House, and think about how we talk about Hispanics getting what they voted for, white women getting what they voted for, Ukrainians are too. And again, it's heartbreaking to see what's happening in terms of those people having no safe place to be in their own country. Yet um, they are responsible. They, meaning those in this country, they are responsible for what's happening now. They um, they chose their own fate. But you know what's funny about that? Not in a ha-ha way. Um, the Ukrainians in this country who left Ukraine because of what was going on in Ukraine were very much aware of the connection between Trump and Putin, and yet they voted for Trump, knowing what was happening in their country and knowing his relationship with the one who was killing their relatives in that country. Same thing with Hispanics. They knew what they were doing, but yet they did it anyway. Same thing with Palestinians in this country. It's almost like they didn't care what happened to their folk back home, but they were saying they did because they knew what the attitude of Trump was. So I
Can
say
I
all,
look?
I say all that to say this,
Uh-huh.
that in no uncertain terms speaks to me very loudly. It says to me that our Creator brought this into existence purposely for the express purpose of those who desire to have the mentality of a European, uh, reaping what they sow, and that is um, they wanted they wanted to be accepted by Europeans so bad until they got on the bandwagon of getting rid of immigrants and mistreating people who do not have any power to stand up for themselves. Go ahead, Ron.
And I guess I'm saying the same thing you just said. The the uh the thought too is I'll vote for anybody with the exception of a black female. Uh, they wouldn't. I think that too played a part of it. Uh, the the profile that Africans have throughout the world uh, everyone mainly has taken that European approach to how they see things, and they could not see beyond skin color. They could not see beyond gender. They could not see the energy of her message, and they missed it. They totally missed it. So I think just blatant racism and her being a female also played a very strong role in this.
I agree. Um, Today is Sunday, and all over this country, there are doors open. And those open doors in these structures called churches haven't a clue as to how to deal with the problems at hand. Um, I was speaking with someone, and I said to them that the very people who always quote in scripture to you have no clue as to what it means. And they don't realize that even though the books that are called a Bible that lie before them is filled with the directions that should be taken in order for us to bring the peace that we so desperately need. Yet, they take a hands-off approach to it. And that hands-off approach is let God handle it. Just keep praying, God go change it. And even if they believe the words that Jesus said at the cross, or the words that were attributed to him anyway, and those words, it is finished. So even with that, if you translate that, if you just look at it on its face, it's saying, I'm done. So what does that mean? That means that the events that take place in this earth are within our power to change for the betterment of humanity. Yet we look at the scriptures, and rather than look at the spiritual nature of them and see what they're actually saying, we have chosen to embrace Caesar's interpretation of the scriptures. We embrace Caesar rather than embracing our Creator. And as a result of that, things continue to happen the way that they are. And right now, the whole world is in Egypt. The whole world is in a tight place. What does it mean to be in a cramped space or a tight place? When we talk about being in a cramped space, we are not speaking of anything physically. There are people right now who live in who are lost their jobs, and they're in a tight place. Their home didn't shrink. The environment they live in didn't shrink. So what do we mean by that? That when we talk about, or the scriptures talk about being in a tight place, it means that you are in a space that you have no clue about how to get out of, or to expand, or to change the energy where you are. When you go into the wilderness, meaning that you begin to see all of the chaos, not just in your environment, but that is in you in terms of your thoughts, your desires, that seemingly is not moving or changing anything on your behalf. When you begin to look at that, it pushes you into a tighter space. It makes it harder for you to breathe. It makes it more difficult for you to clear your head. And that is done because if you are not put in a cramped space, you're less likely to seek a way to benefit humanity, or you're less likely to question why is it that nothing is changing and I trust God. That happens, and you continue to stay in that space until you realize that all of this chaos has a source. And when you begin to look at the source of the chaos and see it's not you, you begin to search for who you really are. And when you look through the scriptures and you see things like, I say that ye are gods, and I think in Psalms, and, excuse me, and then you hear those who, the theologians, tell you that that's the little g God. It's not talking about the big G God, which is asinine. And you begin to realize that that doesn't make sense to you. And the more you are in search of quote unquote God or your creator, the more you begin to see you. And you finally come to a place where you see that God is not what you thought it is, or doesn't look like what you thought it was supposed to, because you begin to see as these things are drawn out of you and being drawn out of you, I see them as you being made aware of all of the things that has you in this cramped space. And when you see that, what do you see? You begin to see who you are. And when every time you raise up the mirror or you see the creator and you don't realize it. But when you come to realize that the one who created you to be just like it, then you begin to learn, to be made more aware of who you are. And that in itself guides you in a direction that will open your eye even more, allowing you to submit yourself to the spiritual essence of who you are, so that you can find inner peace. And that inner peace that you find is not what you think it is either, because that inner peace that you find is not what we thought peace is. That inner peace that you find is a calmness in the midst of a storm. And the storm around you is the chaos. And the more you are able to see that you are no different than the one who created you, the more you begin to see that, the more you are apt to seek deliverance for humanity. And now when you get to the place where you're not concerned about the space that you are in, but you are concerned more about the space, the cramped space that humanity is in, is at that point when you look at yourself, or you look at yourself retrospectively, you see that the thing that really freed you from that cramped space is, number one, finding out who you are, being made aware of who you are, and the deep desire that you have to free humanity from the cramped space that you were experiencing. And that in itself brings you your freedom, your peace, to the extent that you are willing to stand in the gap for for humanity, because you realize that none of this is about individuals. All of it is about energy sources. It's all of it is about chaotic energy or about energy of awareness. And at this point, you begin to seek a deeper understanding of yourself, which means that you're seeking a deeper understanding of humanity. And you begin to see things that you never saw before, and you begin to make connections that you never were able to make before. And it puts you in a space where we are now, seeking to free humanity globally from this cramped space that they are in, and that cramped space that actually was brought into existence by someone who feels like they have risen above uh, the status of humans because of the amount of money they have, because of the means that they have. And now here we are in this session, seeking to understand with a greater clarity not only who we are, but how we can be an asset to humanity, so that mankind will see that your worth is not attached to how much education you have, I don't have, how much money you have or don't have. Your worth is what it was from the beginning, and it is not measured by anything in this earth. Questions or comments? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. To me, it does.
Any questions or comments? So here we are.
I have a question,
Uh-huh.
and I guess you'll get to it. Your purpose for saying that to us?
Beg your pardon?
I say the reason why you're telling us this about what's happening, what you just talked about.
Because it was infused in me by the ancestors. I don't have any preconceived thoughts about what I'm going to say or the direction that I'm going to take. I just sit in the presence of the ancestors more often than ever. And when I start talking, I began to see things that I never saw. And this morning, I feel like what just happened is um, the ancestors granted us an opportunity to remind us of who we are, remind us of where we came from, remind us of our mission, remind us and to encourage us to stay the course. Because without our staying the course, there is no hope for humanity. I hope that helps you, Evan.
Yes, sir, and it resonates. Thank you.
I've never been asked that question before, by the way. Are there any other questions or comments? Oh, no, thank you, Evelyn. I want to touch on something. If there are no questions or comments, or is there anything that you guys would like to speak to? I want to talk about for just a minute, if I can. I mentioned this to Ron a few days ago, and I said to him, I want to talk about poverty and violence. I want to talk about the politics of poverty. And he said that sounds like a title of a book, and I asked him to start writing. I do is forward. So, what is the politics of poverty? First of all, I do believe that we have to um, have some understanding of what politics is. We are told that there is a difference between religion and politics should never be discussed in the church. Neither should the issue ever be raised in the church because they are separate. That separateness is applicable only to people who look like us in order to keep us from paying attention to what's really going on. Politics were developed by people, but let me say it the way it is. Politics came into existence by the Greeks for European politics, came into existence by the Greeks. There was nothing known as politics in Africa. It was simply a way of life, how everyone were taken care of. And this idea of politics has taken over the world. And knowing that politics is whatever the one who is in charge of it defines it to says that it is. And when we look at it, we see it as a method of manipulating humanity for the express purpose of keeping a handful of people in power. It is a system that has been developed so that 7% of the people in the world can control the 93% of the people in the world. And this has continued since the Greco-Roman days. So when we talk about the politics of poverty, there is a system in place that keeps people of color, especially people of African descent, in their place. And this has been the case long before there was a constitution written or a United States of America, because enslavement was here long before there was a organized nation. The idea of this system was perfected by Ronald Reagan. And it has been built upon ever since then. When Reagan began to make it more difficult for people of color to go to higher institutions of learning through taking away grants and replacing all of it with loans and busting unions by firing the air traffic controllers, all those things, and decreasing the opportunity for people of color, for Africans in particular, to find a living wage. He called it trickle-down economics, and all of it trickled up and not down. So this system was put in place, and it was very much supported by the church, and particularly the evangelical church supported it, and so did the Black church. And the reason the Black church or the African church supported it is because whatever white folks did or said politically, they embraced it, especially if it was a Democrat. So here we are now in the midst of this system that was designed to maintain poverty. And poverty comes in different forms. Let me begin with, if I may, the poverty that we are most familiar with. The poverty that we are most familiar with is the depletion of employment in the neighborhoods of Africans in particular. During the period when Johnson was president, the HUD decided under his watch, that they were going to do a project. And that project was to see how effective it would be to take African Americans and force them into a living condition that was less than acceptable, yet making sure that they never rose to a space in their lives where they could free themselves from those conditions. And this project was called the Projects. And to this day, we know them as the Projects. And we see with the clarity how successful they were in herding us into these spaces called projects. And in doing so, they became open air concentration camps that were manned by the local policemen, who were no different than the slave patrols. And in doing so, they also moved out of the communities meaningful employment. They moved the jobs that really provided economic progress. They removed them from the proximity to these communities that were filled with projects, and what they replaced them by making sure that people live beneath the poverty level. Just pulling out a number, let's just say that the poverty level for a family of 4 is $25,000. If that is the poverty level, then what they began to do was to make sure that there were low-paying jobs in that area that kept you below the poverty level, so that you would not have residual income to do anything. And as this plan progressed, we began to see that they began to subsidize these incomes with food stamps. Now, keep in mind that food stamps were never intended for us. Food stamps came into existence for white people, primarily for the white people who lived in southern states and in rural areas. And you can see that by looking at percentages. I listened at a video, and there was some stats on that video, and 67% of the people who are on food stamps are white people. 27% are Africans. So they were going to subsidize them so that they could force us to live below the poverty level. So a decision was made during the Reagan administration that they were going to institute a program where it was more expensive to go to school. And if you went, you would leave with so much debt, you'd never rise above the poverty level. In addition to that, to make sure that there was no leadership in the community, they separated the brightest students by putting them in, what are these classes in school? Advanced classes. And those advanced classes only had 2 or 3 Africans, and the rest of them were white kids. And they made sure that these kids stayed separated from the rest of the community, so that they would grow up to feel themselves being beyond what the people who lived in that community, being above them, being superior to them because they made more money. And they put them in those positions, and they gave them opportunities to move into neighborhoods that looked like white neighborhoods, so that they could keep them under control by virtue of increasing their salaries and they think they've made it and left everybody else behind. So the question becomes at this point, who's in poverty? Which one is in poverty? The one who lives in those neighborhoods or the ones who lives in the projects? Who's in poverty? Both of them are. Because there are so many of us who moved into places like that and were not able to afford to eat. There are many of us who moved in places like that, and the only furniture you had was a living room suite and a bedroom suite. Nothing else in the house. All of it was a facade. So what they actually did was create levels of poverty in two spaces, in the projects as well as in those spaces where people looked like they had made it. And their mentality to maintain that status was so strong until they did not realize that they too were living in poverty. They just had a bigger house in a different neighborhood. Am I making sense so far? Hello?
Yes, you are.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So both are in poverty. And guess what else is? Both of them are living below the poverty level. You're making 200 grand, and these people are making $7.25 an hour. And because you have bought into the American nightmare that's called American dream, you now are making that amount of money, but you're living beyond that amount of money because you're trying to keep up with white people. We call it the Jones, ain't the Joneses, white people that we're trying to keep up with. And both of you are living below the poverty level. And both of you have been convinced that you can do better, meaning that the project people are saying, I'm getting out of here. So they become athletes. The people in these other houses are saying, these big houses are saying, I'm going to get a promotion, and it never comes. And then the first time that they raise their voice about something, they are reminded that they don't own this company that they're working for. And they become to realize, if I lose my job, I'm going to lose everything I have. So they become complacent to the corporation. And the ones who live in the projects, they become complacent to the lies that this is your community. And what happens is, now that there's no money in the community, the introduction of drugs comes into the community. And with the introduction of drugs, the government provides the drugs and at the onset, and the government brings into existence these street gangs to distribute the drugs and to fight each other. So poverty equals violence means that these communities were made war zones by the U.S. government through the distribution of drugs, especially crack cocaine. And because they became war zones, the people who live in the big houses don't want to have anything to do with the people who live in the projects. And most of them won't even walk through the community or even deny who the people they are related to who lives there. And now they are in this big house, and they don't understand, why is it that I'm going into this neighborhood, or why is it that it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm coming from a concert, I get pulled over by the police, and I'm laying face down on the ground, and my brand new car is they're telling me that I stole this car that I just paid for, or I'm paying for, I should say. And then over here, the same thing is happening with the people who are living in the projects. Now, what we are seeing here is the politics of poverty and the politics of violence. First, you put them in a space of poverty, then you introduce drugs to the community, and what you are doing is selling short-term gratification, and that ends up in long-term misery. And the misery in the poverty-stricken neighborhoods called projects and the poverty-stricken neighborhoods called upscale housing are the same. Now, what happens? You begin to use media to make the people who lives in the projects look like the most violent people on earth, and no one wants to deal with them because what you've done, you have projected worldwide that these people are animals. These people are less than human. That's what you've told the rest of the world. And the ones who are in these upscale houses, they feel like that they are above the ones who are in the projects until they find out they're being treated the same way. Now, when we began to come in contact with other people around the world, we began to see that they think less of us than they do the dog that they have in their arms. So what do? We began to live a lifestyle. And watch this. There was a period prior to living in these upscale homes and having these upscale jobs that we would not allow a dog in our house. Now we sleep with it. And you guys know I'm telling the truth. That has never been us. But because of the introduction to what we call a higher lifestyle, we began to take on the images, take on the same principles that they presented to us. They've been sleeping with dogs in their houses for years. We didn't do that. Now here we are doing that in our upscale community. So what happens? The ones in the project start doing the same thing that they're doing in the upscale community because it makes them feel like they have arrived. Why am I telling you this, Evelyn Axe? I'm telling you this so you will see that regardless of where you are in terms of your living circumstances, regardless of where you are in terms of your bank accounts, all of it boils down to the same thing. You're living in a project. And you can be brought to a place of abject poverty at any point, regardless of how much money you have. It can happen overnight. Ask Jane Brown. They can do that. So why is this necessary to understand? The Creator did not intend for anybody in this earth to live that way. The Creator did not intend for anyone in this earth to be ruled over by another man, meaning that we have embraced the European mindset as being the mind of God. We have embraced the European mindset of being the mind of God, because whatever that European mindset is, whatever it speaks to as being something special, we buy into it. And we embrace it. And we become in our minds as they are in reality. And as a result of that, we look down on our own people, and we run from our own history. We run from the reality of the spiritual nature of the scriptures. And we take the scriptures literally. If you do that, you're literally a fool. We have no understanding of the scriptures because we have sought to get understanding from the very ones who have sought to introduce us to the world as animals. We have lost our self-respect and self-identification because we're trying to hold on to the identity of something that we are not. God, our creator, did not intend for that to be. We cannot be these the deliverers that we were brought into this earth to be if we maintain that type of mentality. We now are at a place where we see that we are we are gods. We are the creators embodied in this bodily form. We are in a space where we are supposed to change this whole scenario that I just described. We are to change this sense of poverty and violence. Now, the other part of poverty is this. What I just described to you is material poverty. Can you see that? Before we go into the
Yes.
other,
Yes.
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 thank you. So we just talked about material poverty. Let's look at the other aspect of poverty that we have been cast into without even knowing it. We have been cast into spiritual poverty. And the way we have been cast into spiritual poverty is by having been introduced to Christianity. And if you feel uncomfortable, please just stay uncomfortable for a few moments and don't hang up until I explain myself. When we were introduced to Christianity, it was not for the purpose of salvation. It was not for the purpose of having our name changed. It was not for the purpose of going to heaven. We were introduced to Christianity for the purpose of enslavement. And there is no one on this call or anywhere on this earth who can dispute that if they look at the history of the introduction of Christianity to the African. We were introduced to Christianity for the express purpose of enslaving us and taking everything away from us and minimizing our purpose for being in the earth. And when Christianity was introduced to us, that was the first step towards bringing the African to a state of spiritual poverty. And the first things that happened to bring us to this place of spiritual poverty was the changing of our names. They anglicized our names. When I was in school, the name that was given to me was Obote. And that name meant something to me because it was given by an African priest. What I'm saying to you is this. It is important for us to realize that your name or whatever you call yourself means something. Names connect you to a culture. And when you change the name from an African name to an anglicized name, what you have done is taking the first step towards separating a people from their culture.
Pastor,
Uh-huh.
what does Abote mean?
Oh God, born on Saturday, I think it is. It's been so long since I looked it up. It just came to me just now. As actually Bote Nkrumah, what it was. And I think Nkrumah means to be born on Saturday, comes from that. What was that? Oh, the name is the first step towards that. But Ron, I'll look that up and let you guys know, okay? The name is the first step. Now, what happens next? The next thing that happens is you are taken from the land. You are separated from your natural environment, and you are put in an environment that is foreign to you. Because not that you are living on a different landmass, that's not the environment I'm talking about. You're put in an environment that you're not familiar with, and that is an environment of violence, forced labor, rape, murder. That's the environment that you're put in. And now you cannot understand the nature of this environment because those are not your attributes. So now what's happening is you're being forced to embrace these attributes that are foreign to you. How are you forced to do that? You are forced to do that by being forced to procreate with your mama or your sister or somebody in your family. And that is to break down your self-respect and break down the respect that your woman has for you and you has for her. That's the division beginnings of the division of a family structure. And very few of them were like Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom was told this girl had done something, and she was brought to Uncle Tom, and he was older on the plantation, and he was told to beat her, to punish her, and he refused to do it. And he took the punishment rather than him punishing her. He took the whipping rather than him laying a hand on her. This was a fight to hold on to their dignity, to hold on to what's deep inside of us. And now here we are going through all of these ordeals, and we're losing sight of our culture. And now we go to church. We are forced to go to church, and we are in church, and the preacher is telling us that we are heathens. The preacher is telling us that we have no history. Now, it's not that we don't have history, it's that our history was interrupted. It telling us that we are, according to the scriptures, we are doomed to be slaves to white people for the rest of our lives. This all comes from the Christianity that we were introduced to, so as to make slavery acceptable based upon on the Bible, on scriptures that they did not understand. And we bought into that. So now here we are. We are Christians. We are Muslims. We are Jews. We are Hindus. We are Buddhists. And we are nobody. Because none of that speaks to who we are. Every religion that I just named had its foundation in spirituality, meaning that they took the African beliefs and they molded them into what they wanted it to be for the purpose of control. The Arabs did the same thing with Islam. But actually, it was Mohammedan. They did the same thing with that. And the Arabs are Asian and Europeans who intermarried. That's where Arabs came from. And that's why they're called Semitic, because they are part European and part Asian. Now, they invaded just like the Europeans did. And when they did that, they forced Islam onto the people. And now here we are with two sets of white folks impressing upon us a belief system that has no value to us at all. And now we are in a situation where we are in a state of spiritual poverty. We know absolutely nothing about poverty. We know about, our spirituality. and we began to learn about our history. And the only thing that we are permitted to know about our history is that we were slaves and we are Christians. That's it. And neither one of those fits who we really are. And that's why we found so much discomfort with it. And guess what? That is the reason that most of us on this call and all of us who are teachers went through the same thing, raising questions about Christianity, because what we were being taught, some of it just didn't make sense. And raising questions about it rather than getting answers, we were told God didn't mean for you to understand everything. That was the escape that we were given. And here we are when we began to search for an understanding of Christianity. What we found is that we were starving spiritually. What we found is that we have been living in spiritual poverty. And when you take spiritual poverty and couple it with material poverty, you have a people who are so confused until they don't know what to do. They don't know who they are. And they end up going to the enslaver, going to the master, asking the master to give me the right to vote, asking the master to give me an opportunity to work on your plantation. Because every time that we make an effort to create our own, the master burns it down. Now here we are. We are in a space where we are tired of living in spiritual poverty. Here we are. We are not only searching for an awareness of who we are, but we are also partaking of the nutritional value of history, the nutritional value of spirituality. We have been cast so deeply into spiritual poverty until we believed that ancestors was a demon worship. When we would never worship ancestors, we embrace them for who they are. We gain direction from them. And here we are. We have known for thousands of years that our ancestors guide us in this earth. We have been knowing for thousands of years that all of us came from the womb of an African female. We have been knowing for thousands of years that the cosmic mother is the source of our wisdom. We have been knowing that. But here we are now, beginning to not only become aware of it, but beginning to embrace it. And that is what's pulling us out of this sense of spiritual poverty. And and we're still working on becoming more aware of who we are, because we have not begun to understand or to experience the depth of inherent power that we were created with. The power that we were created with was not power for us to subdue anyone. It was for us to aid everyone. It was for us to become the leaders of humanity, to make sure that all of humanity was taken care of. But yet, during our period of spiritual poverty, we did not recognize that Islam, Christianity, and all the other isms were designed to keep us separate from each other. The depth of that separateness. I was listening at this guy from from the continent of Africa, and he was talking about how difficult it is for Africans to get a visa to visit other African countries, and he said that Europeans can get a visa overnight, but they have put into place in the African countries and the governmental agencies a litany of hoops that you have to jump through in order to get a visa from one African in one country to visit another African country. The reason for him saying that was to show the depth that white people have gone through in order to keep us separated from each other and to make us feel like we are different from each other and make us feel like there is no real connection for each other and we can't trust each other. But when we begin to sit at the table of spiritual nourishment, we began to see the lies that have been told to us and the lies that we have participated in spreading. And now what do? We began to purge ourselves from all of those lies, and the purging takes place really when we began to embrace who we were created to be. So we have a choice. We can live in material and spiritual poverty, or we can choose to be the spiritual essence of who we were created to be, which means that we are inferior to no one. What means that we have a task, we have responsibility, we have a mission, and that mission is to bring balance to this earth. And you cannot do that unless you walk away from the mentality that has been entrenched in us over these hundreds of years. Does that make sense so far? Questions or comments?
Yes, it makes sense.
Makes sense.
Good morning. This is Audrey. Sorry, I'm late. I have not even heard most of the lesson, but you bring up a lot of things that I remember talking about in a lesson like 4 or 5 years ago, about how, but I think when we came into this land, meaning the United States or wherever in the New World, I agree with you when you say that we lost our spiritual foundation and all our beliefs in the Creator and our ancestors, and because that was our whole culture before, we needed to have something. We needed something, which is why we fell into the Christianity. Because before that, our whole culture was based on our relationship with the Creator, with our relationship with the land, with our relationship with our ancestors. So we needed some kind of quote unquote spiritual foundation after we came into the New World. But you're right, it didn't, even though we threw ourselves into it, it didn't make sense. The whole thing didn't make sense, which is why we began to question and question and question. And it created a situation where it created even more duality than we had experienced ever before. Because it created this thing with the races, it created this tension with politically, it created this tension between Black men and women. So it just created many, many, many more situations of duality that we had to then find our way around or find a way to make sense of it. Because when we came to the New World, we had no connection with this land. We had no connection with, and no real spiritual foundation. So it just made things even more intense and out of equilibrium and out of balance. So yes, you're absolutely right that we have to shed the negative narrative. We have to shed any narratives that create this spiritual ineptitude, I guess I would say. So we have to shed this sense of ourselves as this false sense of ourselves, which is Christianity, I guess.
It is.
And if we don't do that, then we won't reconnect with our ancestors. We won't reconnect with that spiritual, with our spiritual selves. And we also do that by shedding not only the false narratives about ourselves, but the false religion and the false concepts and the false beliefs. And reconnect with our creator, reconnect with our ancestors. And now we've even lived on the land long enough that we can reconnect with the land in terms of being environmentally responsible, because that's all a part of being spiritual.
Yes. Thank
Anyway,
you.
that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. As you were speaking, think about this. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are the most violent religions on earth. That's not who we are. So why would we believe that Islam is something that we brought into existence? Islam, most of the people I know and have known who embraced Islam was looking for something to hold on to, as opposed to looking more deeply into its origin and what it meant. The biggest danger to Africans on the continent of Africa today is Islam. And we have to embrace it for what it is. It is a religion with a European mindset, wrought with violence and hatred. It is no different than Christianity. The same people who brought Judaism and Islam into existence are the same people who brought Christianity into existence, and all of it is for the same purpose. All of it. The idea. Nick said something yesterday. Nick said that it would be a good thing, my words not his, but the same concept, for Russia to be successful in what they are doing. And I agree with that. 100%. Because it has to happen in order for the foundation of European mindset. The European mindset can be altered or uprooted. And the reason we as Africans have a problem with that is because, well, it's probably twofold. One is the number of people who are being killed in Ukraine. That's part of it. Because we are not like that. That's not something we embrace. That's not something that we say you deserve it or you ought to die. That's not it. We know that you are the victim of your own circumstances. And we feel for that. However, it is necessary for that to happen so that the European mindset will be a mindset that eventually destroys itself. When you look at what's happening now between Russia and Ukraine, what you are seeing is the attitude that Europeans had towards each other from the beginning, killing each other. That was it. The white dude on a video I'm watching, he said that he doesn't understand why people would buy into the lie that Africans are violent people when the only thing Europeans knew before they came in contact with the African was killing each other, and then they just started killing people who didn't look like them. Well, that's what they are now. And the reason we find it so difficult to embrace the words that I'm talking about that Nick offered to us yesterday is because deep inside, that's not who we are, to watch people die wholesale. The other part of it is we still have a strong loyalty to America. That's why we are talking so badly about Russia, when there is no difference between Russia and America with except one, and that is structure. Political structure is the only difference. So when you talk about what Russia is doing to Ukraine, think about what America did to Iraq. Shock and awe. So what am I saying to you? I'm saying to you that the reason we feel the way we do about this is because we are not living in spiritual poverty now. We were, but we aren't now. When you live in material poverty, you live in a constant state of confusion. When you live in spiritual, when you begin to embrace the spiritual essence of your being, you no longer live in spiritual poverty nor in material poverty, because you realize that money is not what makes you who you are. And yes, you go through things because that's the way the system is designed. And that's the system that we are in the process of changing right now. My words to you are these. Never accept defeat. When you accept defeat, you are still in spiritual poverty. Never embrace an idea of what you cannot do. Only embrace the reality of who you are. And by doing that, you embrace the unlimited power that you have to be beneficiary to humanity. This idea of spiritual poverty ends today. For any of you who are living in spiritual poverty, it ends today. You have to purge yourself of that if you are going to truly embrace who you are. How is it that our looking to the ancestors for guidance, how is it that it is deemed to be pagan? It is deemed to be of the devil, or however you want to put it, in all those negative terms. How is it that could be true? The reason that we think it's true is because white people said it. So why is it that they've been here 10,000 years and we've been here for millions of years, and we've been doing this for millions of years, and it's been helping, it's been guiding us. It brought us to a state where there is absolutely nothing in this earth that has been invented that we didn't invent. And the reason we were able to do it is because our unicity with our ancestors, the unicity that we have with the cosmic mother. birthing everything. That's who we are. We did not, we did not have any problems interacting with anyone except Europeans. So our mindset shifted with Christianity. Christianity less than what, 2,000, 3,000 years, and here we are. Here we are walking away from who we are because the system of Christianity that enslaved us, manipulates us, kills us, tells us we're worthless. It's the system that we have embraced. I say to you, you make the choice. You can live with those principles of Christianity and embrace what you have been told about yourself, that you're worthless, that you're less than an animal, you're inferior to everything and everyone in the earth, and your lot for the rest of your generations is to be enslaved. If that's what you want to embrace, you have a choice. You can do that. Or you can embrace the reality that you are a deliverer. You are a savior. If you take the words in the scriptures and look up the names, this is what I want to ask you to do. I want you to go to your Bible and choose any genealogy, especially in the Old Testament, any genealogy, and define at least 5 to 10 of those names. Write each one on a sheet of paper or type it, whatever you want to do with it, but have each one of them there and read them, what they're meaning, and see if they produce a story. See if they produce a story.
Sage,
Example.
this is Vermel. Could you? Okay, I'm gonna wait till you give the example. Thanks.
Okay, example is this. Abraham. Abram was father. When you come to realize that you are more than an earthly seed, when you accept that you, from you came generations that is innumerable. When you realize that, you become Abraham, because what that is saying is you have come to understand that you are not a mere man in the earth. You are a spiritual being living in a earthly body. And because of the spiritual essence that you have embraced, you see that you are the spiritual seed for all of humanity. That name says all of that. You look at Moses, out of the tight spot you come, and you have to draw those things out of you that cause you to stay in that tight spot. And in order for you to do that, you have to realize that tight spot that you were in is also your wilderness. And you have to purge yourself of all of those things that kept you in that tight spot, in that wilderness, waiting for you to die. You purge yourself of those things, and then you can go into the land of promise. You can go into a consciousness that has been promised to you. And that consciousness is a spiritual consciousness that supersedes the earthly consciousness that you were living in when you are in that tight spot. Can you see that story? Vermeer?
I feel like I feel the story.
I
I think I have to get past my, where do I go look for, you're just saying follow the genealogy in the
anyway,
Bible?
yes.
Okay.
In the
Okay.
New Testament, Old Testament especially. Yeah. follow.
Okay. All right.
Everything there means something. And this did not come from some Eastern Europeans who call themselves Jews. This has been in existence since Kemet. And yes, they've manipulated it. But the truth, you can mess with it all you want. You cannot get rid of it. It's more difficult to get rid of the truth than it is to move the earth. Because the truth is not going anyplace. You can beat it down as we have been beaten down, but we are still who we were brought into this earth to be. The truth always rises again. The African can never be destroyed. No one can destroy the African because we are more than a body. We are more than a concept that was put forth by men. We are the concept of life that was given by the one who created us, the one who was never created itself, but created us. We are the life of the land, meaning that we are the life of the consciousness of this earth, as well as the consciousness of spirituality. And no one can bring this earth to the place where we can truly say, as above, so is below, except the African. It was called a Kabbalah by the African for a reason. It was called Africa by the Greeks, but it's a Kabbalah for a reason, because it is the land of life. It is the progenitor for all life in this earth, regardless of whether it is a tree or a bear. It doesn't matter. Questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
My question is what is your advice for like younger people so that we don't fall into the trap of like spiritual poverty as we're growing up in the times we are now?
My advice to younger people, number one, is this: respect your elders. Do not look at your elders as being somebody who's too old to know anything. That's number one. Number two is study your history. Not just the history of slavery, but the history of us from the Kushite kingdom forward. Study that. Look at the different different spiritual beliefs in different countries on the continent. Like the continent has been divided into 54 countries. Look at the spiritual beliefs. You can find different words because they speak different languages, but you go find the same concept throughout. But I say, and I ask you to do that on your own, because when you see something and read something for yourself, when you see who you are from credible sources, that's what makes it real to you. That's what as for me, if I read it 10 years from now, it'll come up to me again and I'm able to articulate it. And I'm saying that your desire is the thing that becomes your recorder so you don't forget. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I beg your pardon?
Yes, it makes sense.
All right, thank you. Yeah, any other question?
Not a question, but a quick comment.
Sure.
And even if you're reading the Christian scriptures, you kind of have to read it with a grain of salt and be aware too, because even when you mention Abraham and Moses just now, where did they get their knowledge, concepts, whatever? Abraham, Melchizedek, Melchizedek was an ancient priest. Coming from where? Probably Kemet,
No question.
Moses. Midianite priest Jethro. He got his guidance from him. He was an ancient priest. Coming from where? Probably Kemet. So, I mean, there are little things that we overlook in the Bible, but very important things, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So we kind of have to look at that and let our spiritual intuition guide us too when we're reading those things. Anyway,
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I just think that points to the fact that the Bible is finally being awakened, and the words are not just mere words on a page anymore.
I
They-
agree with that.
yeah,
I think they actually weren't being awakened to a point that's far beyond what we thought we were awakening when we were looking at it, studying through the concordance, you know?
yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Having no questions or comments beyond what we've talked about this morning, I think
I'm sorry, I did. My
Go ahead.
bad. I did have a question.
That's okay.
So as I was listening, and you're talking about, how Christianity was used for us not to go to heaven, right, but to perpetuate and further slavery. I'm feeling like, okay, so I'm not really a Christian, but then you say the Bible is being awakened even more, and that there are truths there. So like Christianity as an entity is kind of which I think I understand. That's the part really that's like being used as a manipulation tactic, but not necessarily that we have to just refute or throw away the Bible. We just have to look at it deeper.
Yes.
Okay.
What
So
we're
the
saying,
Bible is not necessarily not true, because of course a lot of those stories and things that we learn in there came from other traditions that were inherently ours in the first place. Is that right?
yes, they are inherently.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. Keep in mind, please, that the Bible is not Christianity. Christianity is something
Okay. All right.
that was
Okay.
developed. Okay. And not only that, the Bible is not Christianity. Also, the Bible is not the Old Testament. The Bible is not Islam, and the Bible is not Judaism. The Bible are sacred writings that were stolen from Kemet by people who did not know what they meant, but manipulated them in order to bring into existence a justification for controlling and enslaving people who don't look like them. It took them 900 years, maybe 1,000 years during the Dark Ages. It took them that long to manipulate those sacred writings. And then the Ginsburg Bible was printed after they manipulated it to the extent that they could use it to justify what they wanted to do. Does that make sense? I don't know who you are, so I can't call your name, but does that make sense?
It's Keita, and yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Anyone else? Any other questions? Thank you, Keita. Okay. Remember that the Bible is not Christianity. It's something separate. Okay. Again, I thank you for your time, the energy, your presence, and I respect your presence from the depths of my soul. And I look forward to tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock for a continuation of our discussions so that we can bring humanity to a place of balance. See you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care, family.
Have a good day, everyone.
Oh, but we